back in nearly 50 years, while the Jets, they were nearly last in all rushing categories. Bell tweeted this out last night: "I'm back in the green, baby. Let's get it." Kenny, how good of a fit is Le'Veon with Sam Darnold and Adam Gase, that offense that they've put together?
Well, I think it's going to be a good fit. I mean, Le'Veon Bell is a tremendous football player. I think he was the best playmaker that was available this offseason, whether it's in the draft or free agency on the offensive side of the ball. But in terms of the move, I think it fits in line with what Mike Maccagnan has been doing all offseason, which is trying to support his young franchise quarterback. I mean, he had the foresight to move up from 6-3 last March to put themselves in position to be able to draft Sam Darnold, and now it's being able to surround him with the right supporting cast. It started with firing Todd Bowles and hiring Adam Gase from the Miami Dolphins. Now, you can argue whether or not that was the right decision, but the hire was made with Sam Darnold in mind, and being able to get the most out of him. And then, of course, making the trade before free agency started, bringing over my former teammate Kelechi Osemele from the Oakland Raiders and fortifying the guard tandem for the Jets. Anytime you start talking about providing a quarterback protection, you got to think about the fabric of the pocket, which is the guard, center, guard trio. So I thought that was a great move. And then, of course, what that's going to bring to your run game now. So being able to establish a new line of scrimmage and then give Le'Veon Bell some space to work with, that takes a lot of pressure off your young quarterback.
The other aspect of it for the Jets, because I know everything surrounds the commentary in the NFL, the quarterback. I get it. But the other aspect for the Jets was they just turned the ball over too much last year. Now, some of that was Darnold. He had 15 interceptions on the year and some fumbles as well. But when you're not going to have, and even with Le'Veon Bell, I don't think they are going to be an explosive play offense. It'll be more so than they were last year because of L. Bell. But Robbie Anderson, it will have one big time play like that every few games.
Well, this is the thing with Adam Gase. You have to be careful. Like, in Miami, that's what they did. They ran the ball from unconventional formations, wide receivers, speed sweeps, and creating big plays down the field. Now, don't fall in love with the concept of you might not like their wide receivers and don't think they can make plays. Man, when you have a running back in there, you have Jamison Crowder in there, a slot receiver, like you have some of the key ingredients that you can generate some big play. Imagine just overnight how well their play action pass got without any design.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, all I got to do is just do like that. I'm going to get a certain amount of attention and the lack of respect they're going to have for people outside. So I think people will be shocked. That's why you go from Todd to Adam Gase from a creativity standpoint offensively.
Well, all the better if they do add some of those, because that's what Miami was last year. They had a bunch of track guys on the outside, and they had they were able to scheme up some huge plays. But whether they can do that on a consistent basis or not, what they have to do is not have the third most turnovers in football and not be one of the worst short yardage teams in football. Le'Veon Bell solves both those problems instantly. Like, he might not make you one of the best teams in football at taking care of the ball, but you're not going to have 30, you're not going to average 2 turnovers a game, and you're not going to consistently be trotting off the field and putting your punter on the field when it was 3rd and 2 because you can't pick up a first down. That in and of itself helps Sam Darnold because it gives him more opportunities. It gives him more chances to make plays.
Well, yeah, I completely agree with you. And having Le'Veon Bell gives your offense a better chance to stay on schedule. Knowing how the rules are set up in the NFL, it makes it hard to really play defense from a down-in, down-out basis. So your goal on defense is try to create negative plays on the offense. Le'Veon Bell will help that Jets offense cut down on the negative plays. And then you also couple what Mike Maccagnan has done on the defensive side of the ball, signing C.J. Mosley. I mean, everybody talks about a running back or a tight end being a quarterback's best friend. No, a really good defense is a quarterback's best friend because they can create field position and extra possessions by making turnovers. So I like everything that Mike Maccagnan has done this offseason. And Le'Veon Bell, to your point, CC, he creates a little bit of a problem from a defensive game planning standpoint because when I was with the Baltimore Ravens, our game plan was, how are we going to stop number 26? And he puts you in this conundrum.
And they had a bunch of receivers then, too.
And they had a bunch of receivers then. He puts you in this conundrum where you're trying to ask yourself whether you're going to match up with base defense or nickel defense. Because if you're in base defense and you try to stop the run, guess what? He gets matched up on a linebacker when he splits out, and we know that that's a mismatch. If you try to play nickel defense, guess what they're going to do? They're going to run the ball down your throat. So he puts defenses in that type type of position. The Jets have not had that kind of guy in a long time on the offensive side of the ball. Somebody that can dictate.
Or even ever. Curtis Martin, the greatest running back they've had in franchise history, but he didn't offer that type of versatility.
Well, we're talking about somebody that can dictate fronts and coverages. The Jets haven't had that guy in a really long time.
Is the job harder for Le'Veon Bell here? Do we take for granted that he had Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown, so it was very easy for him to succeed in Pittsburgh? We just assume he's going to land here and be successful right away, or does...
Listen, I think that the job is harder, but I also think what Kenny said is really relevant. Even with Big Ben and AB, teams were still scheming first and foremost about stopping him. So it's not as if he went from a situation where it's not a number 2 receiver that never got double teamed that all of a sudden becomes a number 1 and is realizing a totally different football life. Now, it is going to be harder because you don't have Big Ben, because you don't have Antonio Brown, but I don't think he's not going to face dramatically
But they must have double
fronts.
teamed AB sometimes where he had a little more open space to run.
Absolutely, but I think we're talking about 2 different types of situations here. Certainly on pass downs, AB would get double teamed. I'm talking about the front that he would see as far as when the Patriots played him in the playoffs. What was Belichick's number 1 goal? Stopping Le'Veon Bell and go from there. That will be a similar situation with him with the Jets.
Yeah, Le'Veon Bell is a special player. And I think at some point in your career, it's nice to play with a lot of players, but it's nice for people to know. And because when you talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, and one thing that he got frustrated with the franchise tag was they didn't regard him as high as Ben Roethlisberger, and they didn't regard him in Pittsburgh as high as Antonio. They gave Antonio the contract, and they could have gave that contract to L. Bell. So when you're with a Jets team that is a Sam Darnold team, he can get a lot of credit. So elite athletes don't think about pressure. They think about opportunities. And I think that he's right now ready to say, you know something, the reason why I held out, I'm going to prove to you guys I'm the best running back. So I look for him to thrive, even though he has less weapons around him.
Well, here's the thing. I think it makes it very clear who the New York Jets are. They have an identity for the first time in a really long time. We're going to play really good defense. Look at all the investments they made on that side of the ball the past 3 or 4 years. And then we're going to complement that really good defense with a strong running game. I think that makes all the sense in the world. But the most important part of all of it is that it helps Sam Darnold continue to develop. That's the biggest part, especially when he's on a rookie deal, because we're seeing teams now realize that when you have a quarterback that's on that controllable wage scale, then it makes it an opportunity to develop the roster where you can compete for a championship.
He averages in his career, not in some subsection of his career, not in the last 2 years, over his entire career, he averages more than 125 yards per game from scrimmage. He is a 2,000 yard from scrimmage per season on average running back. He's the only guy in the league like that. And that is why you go out and you pay him top of the market money. And that is why when there isn't a superstar number 1 receiver available in free agency to help Sam Darnold, I loved the Osemele trade. I'm glad you mentioned that. This is the best thing they can do for him to go along with hiring a coach that they believe, rightly or wrongly, that will also help Sam Darnold take that next step.
You make such a good point. This is a team that had no identity for the last couple of years, and they're now finally moving themselves